February. Thank you, Ashish. Our next meeting in February, which is Ashish, what's the date of our February meeting? 19th?
Yeah.
So on February 19th, we have, I think it's the 19th, we have MCPS will be coming to talk about the phase two construction that'll take place next summer. Let's, Ashish, let's take off the waiting list now, the waiting room.
Yeah, I was in the process of doing that.
Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
thank you. We're going to be hosting MCPS. We're going to talk about the phase two construction project to build the bus driveway at the top of the school or to realign it. And they have some new options to share with us. So they want to meet in February. So we'll have the February meeting. We haven't decided yet whether it'll be in person or virtual. We're leaning towards in person. So we're hoping that well, and I'd love to hear from you in the chat if you prefer in person or virtual, because we want to make sure we can accommodate everyone. But some of these discussions are better to be had in person, which is why we had scheduled this discussion in person. But then the weather had different plans for us this evening, so we had to make a change. So go ahead and put that in the chat just to let us know what your preference is, and we will take that into account as we set up the meeting. We're trying to live stream meetings and do hybrid meetings when we do in-person meetings. We know some topics are really good to have in person, and we're working on technology that we can use to be able to make the meetings hybrid. So we're going to work on that. And then I wanted to also mention that we have our spring fundraiser. That's going to be on Monday, March 31st. We have the Harlem Wizards that are going to come and join us. They're going to play a basketball game against our teachers from our cluster. It's a cluster event. They are an arm of the Harlem Globetrotters. So many of you will recognize the Harlem Globetrotters, really fun group, basketball team, and it'll be a really fun cluster-wide event. So, and as part of that, we are doing a silent auction. So if any of our families have businesses or know of somebody who has a business who might be interested in making a donation, we would love to have that donation. And we have a group that's working on the silent auction for that event as well. Lisa, are you on? Okay, well, we have Lisa, who is our coordinator for that event, and we have some others that are working on the silent auction. And if you have something you would wish to donate, please let me know, and we'll connect you. Now I'd like to turn it over quickly to Dr. Bostic for any updates, and then we'll get to our main topic for this evening.
All right, thank you. Some of the well, good evening to everyone. I know we didn't see everyone the last time. Happy New Year. Thank you for being a part of our community. If you have any questions or things that you're concerned with, please reach out to me via email. I'm trying my best to collaborate with the team to ensure that all of our updates are included in our newsletter. Sorry. Some people reaching out already. With that being said, let me just give you some quick rundowns of some things that are happening to be aware of. There are several scholarship opportunities to be mindful of that is included in the newsletter. So please take opportunity to just look in the newsletter for this week, which was shared yesterday with all families. One thing that I do need support with is that we need to do our parent-child reunification drill. So I shared the form with you. If you don't mind, if we can get some parents to sign up, we'll do a mock version of that drill to ensure that we're safe if we ever need to have a situation where we need to reunify with our parents. Some of the shout outs or highlights, we're currently working with Frost Middle School to plan a Haley Skarupa Day. And essentially the purpose of that is that she's been inducted into the Montgomery County Sports Hall of Fame. She attended both Frost Middle School and Wooten High School. So we wanted to do something for her before the induction, which is happening on May 4th at the Civic Center. So some of our parents are continuing to, or some of our students are continuing to make some strides towards things that are happening in the school system. So I'm very proud of our students and the efforts that they're making. Some of the things about know your rights, civic engagement, supporting our diverse community, and so forth are included in the newsletter. Shout out to our main office team and counseling team. They did place some of the information in the main office and counseling. So if you or your student may have any questions about that, please reach out to myself, counseling, or someone in the main office so we can support you with that. Some of the things that are super important, we have our budget hearings and work sessions that are coming up. I did include that in the newsletter as well. Please try your best to attend one of the sessions led by the superintendent and some of his team members. It's going to be very important that you're connected to the things that are happening with the budget and how it may potentially impact the community that we live in. Uh, Next is Summarize. It's a great opportunity for our students in grade 10 and in grade 11. So please make sure you sign up for that opportunity. It's a summer program, essentially, where you're working with different companies in the Montgomery County area for opportunity to grow as a leader, to get new experiences that will help you. We do have a summarized presentation that is happening at our school on the 23rd during lunch. So please make sure you share that information with your students. And last but not least, we do have our event coming up in February on the 13th. It's Bridges to a Brighter Future. And essentially, that is an opportunity where we're talking to all kids about college, career, and post-secondary opportunities. We will have a panel discussion. After the panel discussion, there will be a table fair with colleges and different opportunities, career, post-secondary, happening during lunch. So those are some key updates. Hopefully that was helpful. Any questions about that?
Thank you very much. Also, we are going to have a virtual chat with Dr. Bostic on Friday. So we do that on the Fridays after the Tuesday PTSA meeting. So that's going to be happening this Friday, I believe at 10:30. Is that right, Dr. Bostic?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, sir.
All right, great. So everyone, it looks like we have a lot of additional users trying to get in. So I am working on that. I think I was able to do it so that we can add capacity. It's the numbers are going up. So we're going to wait a moment so everybody can join who couldn't get in before. Wasn't sure I could add capacity in the middle of a meeting, but now I learn I can do that.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for doing that. Looks like others are getting in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting lots of messages about people trying to get in. So
Yeah, it's good. You can add immediately. That's cool. I
yeah,
just got a call from another person and was asking to get in.
okay. I see the numbers are still going up. So just gonna wait. I'm gonna watch these numbers, and once they stop, we will get started with our discussion for this evening.
Brian, would you want to take this opportunity to go through what the agenda in today's meeting is going to be so we can get it on record and also get everyone to know what to expect in coming time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go over that in a moment. I just for those that are just joining, I did mention that we have in February for the PTSA meeting, we have MCPS coming to talk about the construction of the bus driveway. So they're going to be presenting, they went back to update the options for the bus driveway. and they're going to be meeting. They're going to come to the February PTSA meeting, which is on, I think it's February 18th, but we'll send the information out. So if you want to hear from MCPS, and the project manager will come and talk about what those options are. Also, March 31st, Monday, March 31st, we have our spring fundraiser, and we're pleased to have the Harlem Wizards come and join us for a cluster-wide event. It's going to be a basketball game against our cluster teachers. We're very excited about that. And we'll be having a silent auction as well. So if anyone has any donations, please let me know. And we'd love to have those for the silent auction. And we're raising money for Wooten and some different programs, the athletic department. And we really could use your help. So we hope you buy tickets for the game. You'll hear information about that very soon. All right, now I am very pleased to have Sally and Yigas here from our Montgomery County Council of PTAs. The Montgomery County Council of PTAs, MCCPTA, is the umbrella organization. It's a nonprofit that provides oversight of all the PTAs and PTSAs in Montgomery County. And we're very pleased to have them here. So they are not from MCPS, so just so you know that. But they work very closely with MCPS in many different areas, and certainly on the capital improvement programs and now this boundary study that's taking place. There's actually two boundary studies. One is Crown High School and one is for Woodward High School. And Sally is going to talk about that and give you a chance for some questions as well. And I know there's a lot of interest, and Sally did share with you, our community is very interested in this, and we'll probably, Sally will probably have to take some questions back to get answers, but she'll provide some insight, from her work with MCPS. So over to Sally. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. And first, let me say thank you for inviting us. You guys are our beta test for our first community meeting, really to provide you all with facts and just information about the boundary study. If we can't get answers for you, we'll be truthful about that as well. But thank you all. You guys have a dedicated group of cluster leaders and PTA leaders that we've worked with before. Like Brian said, I'm the Capital Improvement Programs Chair for MCCPTA. I also work with my colleague, Yigas Cowan, who's on the call, who's the DEI Chair for MCCPTA. She's also the co-chair of the MCPS MCCPTA School Construction Work Group. We both facilitate school construction impact teams, which is really how Wooten is really on our radar, if I'm being honest. And Dr. Bostic, I'm glad to see you here as well. We've worked with Dr. Bostic over at Northwood, at Woodward. So there are a lot of connections here tonight. My connection to Wooten is that I actually went to Wooten. My father was a teacher at Wooten and a coach. I went to Frost and Dufeef. And so my ties to the Wooten community run pretty deep and run far back, I will say. With that said, I'm going to provide you guys with a set of slides. And like I said, you're the beta test for us tonight. So I really want to, particularly in the chat, if we could capture the chat, and that way we can enhance or tweak these slides. I'm looking at them as a living document as we go forward, just improving upon the information we provide and updating as things change. We're hoping to have these types of conversations to provide a place for parents to get good fact-based information that they can then share with their families and their students and community members as well. So do I have screen sharing capabilities? I assume I do, right?
Yes, you do.
You should.
Okay.
And Sally, while you're doing that, I'd like to welcome Mayor Ashton to this call as well.
Oh, great. So let's start at the very beginning. So where is Crown High School? If you don't know, it is already under construction. It's at 9410 Fields Road, Gaithersburg. It's a brand new cluster. So that is why this boundary study is happening. You all are 4 miles from Crown High School. It's projected to be completed in the summer of 2027. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you might want to go take a look and see where it is and see, you know, how close it is to the Wooten cluster. So just some information about Crown and, oops, sorry about that. Sorry, guys, my screen is completely frozen.
Sally, you might want to stop sharing for a second and come back again. It might help.
Okay.
Or even switch off your camera if that is okay with you. It will give you some bandwidth.
Okay. Yep, that seemed to work. Okay, so Crown is under construction, as I mentioned. It's being built to relieve overcrowding at the high school level, as well as the middle school level. And it is specifically for the geographic area designated by MCPS and the Board of Education. And I'll pull up a map in a moment, just so you all can get a visual on that. The most important takeaway, I think, for your community is to know that elementary schools are not included in the study. There will be no elementary school under consideration for a boundary study. So if your child is enrolled at Lakewood right now and is a kindergartner, your child will go to Lakewood Elementary School. Nothing is happening at the elementary school level. So what are the key facts to know about the boundary study? It's expected to commence in the spring of 2025 and conclude in the spring of 2026. I say expected because right now we have not heard anything from MCPS. We have no updates, so I don't have additional information to tell you about the boundary study as of this moment. So the Board of Education resolution only authorizes the exploration of boundaries at the high school and middle school level. As I said, elementary schools are not included in the study. MCPS is governed by the Board of Education Policy, FAA, which clearly delineates the MCPS process and required engagement in boundary study considerations. Policy FAA is also accompanied by a set of regulations that provide MCPS planning staff and the consultants with strict guidelines on how to conduct the process. The Crown Boundary Study is inclusive of the expansion of Damascus High School. Damascus High School is currently projected way out in the CIP, and Damascus High School is slated to be renovated and expanded to alleviate some of the overcrowding at Clarksburg. So instead of conducting a separate boundary study for Clarksburg and Damascus, they are included in this study. And then the Crown Boundary Study will occur concurrently with the boundary study to open and populate the new Woodward High School in North Bethesda. And if you haven't seen that school, it is absolutely beautiful. It's on Old Georgetown Road, and it is currently occupied by Northwood High School, which has been demolished, and they are building a new Northwood High School along University Boulevard in its original space, site, I mean.
Sally, people have started asking questions, so I'm gonna propose that we take these questions after you have finished the presentation, okay?
Okay. Yeah, that would be great, just because there's a lot of information here, and I want to make sure that if there's a chance I cover the information, I can perhaps answer a question you may have before that. So these are the schools included in the boundary study. You've got your school, your neighboring cluster of Churchill, Richard Montgomery, your primary middle school, which is Robert Frost, Cabin John, which you all have split articulation to for Stone Mill and Lakewood, I believe, is included in the study as well. And all of this information is fully accessible on the MCPS website. So this is what it looks like. This is what that geographic area looks like. So we're going as far south as the Whitman cluster border. And then we're going as far north as the county line with Frederick County, Maryland, and as far west as the Potomac River up near White's Ferry. So it's pretty expansive. And you can see Crown High School is there with the little red triangle. So who's going to oversee and approve the boundary study? I know folks have a lot of questions about this. Some folks don't really understand that MCPS and the Board of Ed are actually two separate entities. The Board of Ed's role is oversight of MCPS and management of the superintendent's contract. They're actually not the same thing. So MCPS planning staff will manage the study process, and the study consultant who's accepted the, I guess MCPS has accepted the bid for flow analytics, and Bloom Planning is the subcontractor for community engagement. This consultant and subcontractor will provide the data analyses to MCPS planning staff in accordance with the established policies and regulations, and that's policy FAA, which I referenced before. So these analyses will include feedback from the community engagement. So what happens after the engagement process? What does that look like, and how are decisions made, and who has oversight on that? So MCPS planning staff is required to present boundary options to the Board of Education for consideration and approval. The Board of Ed is required to hold public hearings on the recommended study options. And then MCPS Board of Ed votes on the final boundary study recommendations, which are required to be approved by a majority vote of the Board of Education. So this information is directly from the MCPS RFP presentation to the Board of Education in December, and it's taken directly from policy FAA. So what are the factors that go into decisions about boundary studies, about new boundaries, I guess, new alignment for boundaries? So they've got them in this order, and that's taken straight, I believe it's taken straight from the policy. So demographic characteristics of the student population. MCPS wants to create schools with diverse student bodies, so diversity. Geography, they want to keep students close to home, proximity. Stability of school assignments over time. They want to minimize disruptions to a student's education, so stability. And then facility utilization. They want to use the resources wisely, so fiscal responsibility. So those are the 4 factors. So what is engagement going to look like? Well, that's a very good question because we don't have a schedule for engagement yet. But I will tell you that we at MCCPTA are working very, very hard to make certain that our members and our communities, our school communities, have access to as much factual information in a timely manner as we can possibly provide. So the first thing I would say is once that schedule is set by MCPS, I would encourage everyone in your community to participate in surveys, participate in virtual and in-person community meetings that are conducted by the consultants and MCPS. I would encourage you, and there are 210 people here tonight, so I know the Wooten community is eager to attend MCCPTA and cluster-led meetings, which we will hold to inform and gather your community thoughts and opinions. Attend other neighborhood or community group meetings. Just based on my experience in past MCPS boundary studies, you will often see folks who don't have children enrolled in the public schools or currently enrolled or not enrolled at all, come out very loudly with their opinions about what should be done about boundaries. And I just issue a small word of caution about folks like that to make sure that if they show up at your meetings or they are participating on listservs, that those folks have access to fact-based information as well. You can always send letters and emails to board members to share your individual or family opinions or concerns. One of the things I always encourage parents and families and students alike is when you write Board of Ed members or you send emails or letters to include your personal story. Board members and elected officials generally don't necessarily read or respond to form letters. So if you personalize it, you're more likely to get a response that's personal. So that's just my one piece of advice right there. And then offer testimony at board business and boundary study hearings. Your cluster leadership on this call is very, very good about showing up and representing the Wooten community before the Board of Education. And I encourage you all to keep doing that. You can sign up for meetings individually. You can submit written testimony. You can submit video testimony. So there are multiple ways to engage in not only this process, but the broader Board of Education decision-making process. And then lastly, and this is what I say to everybody I speak to about this boundary study process, is stay informed and share fact-based information with community friends and neighbors throughout the process. You will 100%, I guarantee you will hear and see things written and said that are factually incorrect, contain numbers that don't exist or are made up. So just be prepared for that. In this day and age, there's a lot of information that will float past your screen and your phone. That is incorrect. And I encourage you to go to first source data points in order to get the most accurate information. And if at any time you have questions about information, feel free to reach out to your cluster leaders or your PTA leaders or me. I'm happy. I'm always available to chat. I'm always available to hear your opinions. So I just put that out there. That's my biggest thing I always lead with is stay informed and keep it fact-based. So discussion, questions, and concerns. I see the chat's already lighting up here. Not sure how you want to handle this.
I can say the questions from top, and Sally, you can go ahead and respond to them.
Okay.
The first question is by Mike Jones, and they've asked, hi, Sally, could you please explain the point on slide 3 about the phase in enrollment populated by grade? What does that mean?
That's a really good question. So it means that when you open a new high school, you're not going to populate it with 2,200 kids and take kids out of their senior year and put them in a new high school. In the past, Montgomery County has populated new high schools with 9th grade only. I'm saying that as in the past. I don't know if that will change. but phased in enrollment is usually the default approach to populating new schools. And that's all I can offer you right now. I wish I had a timeline. That'll be part of the discussion. People probably have very, very strong opinions about that process. So I would encourage you to just stay up to date on the process and the information as it's shared and the discussion points along that that decision-making point.
Sally, if I might just add, I'm making notes of all of the questions to which we don't have answers, including that one. So to the extent that MCCPTA has discussions with MCPS, we will raise these ahead of time. So hopefully they can deal with them before, we get to that stage.
And just by way of background, Yegas served on the small group of outside community members who looked at the RFP before it went out to bid and after it came into bid. So she's had her eyes on the big document, I guess. And that part of, there's a lot of data that's going to go into these decisions. So that will be something that we will raise too, because it is highly likely that MCCPTA will have representatives on the steering committee.
Bridget Howe is here today too. Bridget is our president of MCCPTA, and she sat on that small stakeholder group with me to review the RFP.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. This is by David Cohen. I recall FFA-RA was updated in late 2019 to reduce the importance of students attending neighborhood schools. Can you address that, please?
So it was updated in actually fall of 2018, so 7 years ago. And it wasn't updated to reduce the factors. It was updated to add the factor of demographic diversity. So geographic proximity, I know, is important for many parents, especially if you don't have a student who's enrolled in a countywide magnet program or another school program. It has not been diminished in terms of a factor.
Okay, moving on to the next question. This is by Dan K. Can the BOE vote for just parts of the study? And this had come directly as a message to me, so probably everybody can't see it.
I believe technically, yes, they could. They could vote for a part of an option, or they could recommend to MCPS. They're not going to adopt it and go back to MCPS and come up with a new alternative. I know that's taken place before. In prior boundary studies that I've seen, MCPS will actually have a geographic tracker where you put in your zip code and your address, and it'll tell you which school you will attend based on the options they have configured. I believe in the Seneca Valley boundary study, they had that, and there were 3 options presented to the board. And if you were a parent or a student, you could go in and put your address, and it would tell you what school you would end up at for each option proposed.
Okay, moving on to the next question, and I see Yegas has already responded to it in text, but I'll still pose it out. It says, what is the relative importance and weight of each factor in FAA? And this question is by David Cohen again. Next one is by Charissa Lynn. I apologize for mispronouncing your name. If I'm understanding it right, currently every elementary school only feeds to a specific middle school and a specific high school. Since elementary schools are not part of this boundary study, will that still be true? If not, are we keeping the cluster concept? If yes, does that mean some elementary schools will belong to 2 different clusters?
First of all, let me correct a piece of that. So not every elementary school in Montgomery County articulates the way elementary schools do in the Wooten cluster. Many cluster schools have split articulation for elementary schools that go to one particular middle school and then feed back into a different cluster. For example, the Down County Consortium is made up of many high schools, many middle schools, and many elementary schools. So it's much more complicated than that. I would say in the Wooten cluster, the chances are in your elementary school, you will be enrolled at a middle school at an elementary school level. And it may be that at the middle school level, then there might be split articulation. I can't really speculate on that. All I can tell you is that right now, if you have a kindergartner, your kindergartner will articulate through 5th grade at their elementary school.
I'm going to go to the next question by Vannyman. Is there a policy to keep siblings in the same school, even if they get separated from this boundary change?
That is a really, really good, important question. So in the past, MCPS in certain boundary studies has offered grandfathering in for family members. So there's precedent for it. Whether or not they adopt that, I don't know. So if you feel strongly about it, and I would imagine there are some folks on this call who do have really strong feelings about it, understandably, then that's something I would encourage you all to advocate for.
It's a great segue to the next question, where John asks, what do we think about grandfathering? What do we think grandfathering will be? I have a 2029 graduate with 2 siblings who attend Wooten.
I said we'd ask that I made a note of it. It's an excellent question.
Yeah, I would. Do you want my personal opinion, or do you want, I mean, we're going to have to ask. I have very, very strong opinions about that. And given that if they look at populating the high school by grade over, time, then then your child may stay at Wooten. I'm not really sure. There's going to be a lot of data and information flying, and that's why I stay engaged and keep track of the information, because it's going to be really important to have access and to know that information when it comes out.
Okay, questions are going faster than the answers here, Sally. So we're going to skip.
Sure.
Next question from Sofan. Our child is taking admission in Wooten High School coming year. So in fall 2027, will she be transferred to the new high school?
I'm going to put my foot down here. And if I were a betting person in Vegas, I would say your student will remain at Wooten High School. There would be an uprising if you took juniors out of their high school. You can't do that. You would decimate teams and clubs and leadership, and especially at a place like Wooten High School where kids are very, very active and have strong views and strong opinions and are very involved, that I would just say, I would venture to guess no, that your child would be at Wooten.
So let me take this opportunity here, Sally. So by that, are you saying the students who are already in the high school, they will continue staying there, and the ones who are coming new will be coming from the new jurisdiction? Is that what you meant?
So I would say if your child is a freshman, so it's fall 2025 or fall 2024, fall 2025, sophomore year, fall 2026, junior year, fall 2027, they're going to be a senior.
Makes sense. Okay, next question by Anand Merchant. Are we as a community kept informed about any interim analysis results after the boundary study is started as planned in spring 2025?
Yeah, so MCPS has a website or a landing page on its website. And I included a link in the slides. But you can Google it right now and go right to it. Unfortunately, it's a skeletal website. There's not a lot of information there, but they will be uploading information as as data is made available for review. So it'll be accessible. And if it's not accessible, you better believe MCCPTA will encourage MCPS to make it accessible, and as frequently and as fluidly as possible.
Next question by Oleg. And the question says, hello, thank you for organizing the meeting. Is Wooten School overpopulated at the moment? Will it be overpopulated by the summer of 27? Is it more overpopulated comparing to other schools?
So Wooten is in the sweet spot. I think you guys are, with the exception of your struggle to get your building renovated, which I appreciate. And I know it's at the heart of so much of the work of the parent volunteers on this call and your students. Wooten has capacity for probably another 200 students, and your elementary schools look great too. If I were a doctor assessing the health and longevity of your schools, I would say you guys are in great shape with your enrollments because you have plenty of space. You are not overpopulated. You are not overcrowded, which lessens the burden of being in older buildings because the wear and tear isn't as bad as if you were bursting at the seams. And you are not projected to be over enrolled at any point. So I think you can take that for what it is. Every year, MCPS updates the CIP, the Capital Improvements Program. It's a massive book, but it is available right on the website. And Wooten has a nice little chapter there that explains enrollments, gives you 10-year projections by year, gives you demographics of your schools, tells you what your programs are and special programs. Like, for example, Cold Spring has the I believe you have the gifted center there, gifted program, and it'll tell you what special education programs you all house. All that information is readily available. So if you are interested in advocating, I would say go to the data first to inform and support whatever your opinion happens to be.
Next question by Mr. Tamaro Hudson. How does the boundary study affect any potential future development of Wooten High School?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I will tell you that the capital budget for Montgomery County is not great. The state budget is not great. We're operating at a $2.7 billion deficit at the state level. We have huge constraints with our local capital budget. The state itself used to fund a program called Build to Learn, which provided usually a third of state dollars to support infrastructure building of schools in Montgomery County. That money is no longer there. We've used it all up. That said, I don't know. And I don't know. I will tell you that MCPS and planning and construction and facilities has promised to update something called the Facilities Conditions Index, which is called the FCI. And they are promising to evaluate 20 schools at a time and be able to make their decisions about where CIP dollars go based on what those indicators tell them about the condition of a school. So the fact that Wooten is approaching 60 years old only works in your favor in terms of a priority. So that's all I can tell you. I can give you context, but I can't tell you if the money's there, when the money will come, and where Wooten falls in the queue. I say queue. A queue doesn't exist, but if the FCIs get updated, a queue will exist. So I hope that helps. I know it's not an answer. It just gives you a context for where you all are in the grand scheme of high schools.
Going to move to the next question by Mona Singh, which has actually already been responded by Yegis. Thank you. So I'm going to skip and going to go to Smeet. Smeet says, I have a couple of comments to raise via video when possible. Thank you. So go ahead, Smeet.
Hey there. Thank you. And I could have saved this for the end after all the questions, but hey, first of all, Sally and Yegas, thank you for doing this. I know this is not, this is not easy, and you're sort of the messenger here, and glad we're the beta test for this sort of communication to the rest of the county. I just wanted to convey a couple thoughts and then ask you, I guess, just a question at the end on behalf of the Wooten cluster as cluster coordinator. So, I mean, as you remember, just like in 2019, the boundary study and any resulting changes will be an issue. This will inflame the community, and it's not going to be an easy process. As you recall, there was a substantial amount of distrust by community members in the process then, who was conducting the study, the results that it would show, and the intended goal or any preset goals, that may have been in place. Additionally, I think there was, back then, there's been litigation over this. Stuff has come out. But there was distrust about the weighing of the different factors that you acknowledge that go into this. So transparency was an issue, communication was an issue, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the case again. And times have changed, the climate has changed, but I don't think it's alleviated the concerns that some of the people in the community had at that time. So having said that, what I still hear is that, notwithstanding the fact that you've got these 4 factors that need to be weighed, and whatever priority that or weight is placed in them, that the weight should be communicated clearly. I still get the feeling that it would take a serious rational justification to move one student from a school that is closest to them and take them farther away from that school. I don't think anyone, we've gone through a pandemic, we've gone through shutdowns, remote learning. The feedback I get from parents in our jurisdiction is that no one has become more open to having their kids reshuffled further away. So having said all of that, in your discussions, with the board or the MCPS, what lessons have they learned from the past, the process over the last 6 years, that they plan to take to try to avoid that angst in the community?
Yeah, I mean, if I could just step back from that, I think we have in MCPS, at least what I've seen in the past 7.5 months, different leadership, different thoughts about how you run a school district. The first thing being paramount is, what is your purpose? What are the highest priorities? And how do you do that with fiscal responsibility? There are a lot of streams of decision-making in this process, not the least of which are the financials of this. Yegas and I do a lot of work with the MCPS Department of Transportation. They are constrained. They have, they're back to where they are in terms of staffing and bus drivers, but in terms of the amount of students they have to transport and get to schools every day is a big hurdle. And I think they understand that kids and parents want the decisions to be made in their best interest in terms of geographic proximity and stability of school assignments, outside of offering students the choice or the opportunity to go to a program that's different than their homeschool. And so the choice to go to a different school, I believe, and this is my personal belief, this is not MC, I don't know, it's just my personal belief that the choice of where you want to go to school outside of your homeschool should lie with the family and the student. So, yeah, I guess, do you want to jump in there just from your perspective?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. Number one, I think that what I want to say at the outset is that Bridget and I, when we sat on the RFP committee, we loudly, very loudly, told them about the community. I think we almost called it PTSD from the 2019 boundary analysis because it was so traumatic for all of us, right? Like the reason why we're all here today is because we were so severely traumatized by the 2019, I'm going to say the words, WXY experience, right? And so we said that to them, particularly because a lot of people in the room were not there for the 2019 experience, number one. Number two, I think we need to remember what the 2019 boundary analysis, not study, because it was an analysis at the time, was prompted by. It was and I'm sure that a lot of you don't remember this, and the only reason I know is because I spent a lot of time looking at that RFP in 2019. So it was prompted by the then student member of the board who had asked for MCPS to relook at boundaries in the light of equity, right? And so that's why they decided I think the board approved this boundary study and they appointed WXY to look at it. Part of that RFP involved creating some kind of tool that would allow parents to kind of look at the different factors, etc. Okay, water under the bridge. One of the things that we have said to MCPS several times is to make it very clear to parents that the only purpose of this boundary study, not analysis, study, is to populate the 2 new high schools because of overcrowding. That is the only purpose, right? We need to figure out which populations are going to go to these 2 schools, and secondly, what programs are going to be in these schools. That is the only purpose. So I hope that answered some of your questions to me, because I want to assure you, we have said this to MCPS more times than I can care to count. Whether they listen to us is, of course, a different story, right? I'm hopeful, given the fact that they have actually taken some of our feedback into account, that they are, as Sally said, the new leadership, they are now listening and being very careful about how they do this. And the second piece to this is Sally's 100% right. We have said to them, you need to include transportation into the equation because there is no money to have buses that move kids all around the county, right? Geography is important. Sally, does that make sense? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, and I saw a comment about their Seneca Valley study was highly contentious. And I've sat in on boundary studies they're always highly contentious. I think getting a foothold on the information in the process before it begins is the first good step for us and for your community as parents. I think holding MCPS's feet to the fire in terms of transparency. And I'm with you. What do those weights mean and what does that look like? Because that could look very different in the Wooten community than it would in the Damascus community. Where transportation is a big deal. Geographic proximity is a big deal because there's not much around you. Poolsville, that's a big deal. So every community, and this is something I want MCPS, we're working really hard with MCPS to recognize every community in Montgomery County is unique. It has its own needs. It has its own character. It has its own traditions. And I think part of the Wooten message should be, this is who we are, and this is what we love about our community. And I think if you lead with that, your story will be understood. And if it's not understood, then that's when you get upset, I think.
Thank you, Sally. I'm going to move to the next question. Wendy Mann asks, how likely will the timeline of the study be kept? Could there be delays possible?
Well, it's a bureaucracy, so there could always be delays.
Yeah.
I would say there have already been delays. Part of that is new leadership. Part of that is transitions that folks didn't know were gonna happen. It is my hope that is not delayed any further. They do have, what is it, upwards of 32 in-person community engagement sessions they have to conduct between now and probably June of 2026. Either way, I fully believe the decision about boundaries will be made. The decision on the boundaries for Crown and for the new Woodward will be made before the fall, before August 2026. So a full calendar year before those schools are set to open.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. Next question by Liddy. Once the contractor proposes the boundary options, is MCPS and subsequently the Board of Education locked into selecting one of those options?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, if I were a smart member on the Board of Ed or an MCPS staff member, I would want to make sure that if I'm receiving those options from the consultant, that I'm presenting the options to the Board of Ed that are the most nuanced and refined and clear to the community and Board of Ed members. I think Board of Ed members can do whatever they want in terms of amending, consulting, you know, throwing it back to committee, so to speak, for revisions. I don't think anything that goes to the Board of Ed is set in stone for adoption by any means.
And I think if I may just add, and Bridget, I know you're on here, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that the the consultant is going to propose several options, but that the ultimate recommendation to the board will be by the superintendent, and that there will be transparency as to what the options are that the consultant has provided, but it is ultimately the decision of the superintendent to figure out what options will be presented to the board, and then the board votes. I just wanted to clarify that. So it's not the contractor proposing, it's also the discretion of the superintendent.
Yeah, so any decision of that magnitude has to come from the superintendent in a memo to the board. So that's the sort of technical process piece to it. If you look at anything that goes to the board, it's usually a memo format from Dr. Taylor. That's how documents are sent to the board. That's how they are received.
Okay, moving on to the next. Elan asks a question. Do we know what kind of special education programs will be there in Crown High School?
We do not. That is a very good question. I think all questions about programs and opportunities for students should be made clear and transparent well before any boundary decision is made final.
So I just want to add to that, Sally. We made very clear as MCCPTA that a program analysis should be part of the boundary study, because you can't populate schools without determining what programs go in that. For cost reasons, I believe they removed the analysis of the programs from the ambit of the RFP, but it is my understanding that MCPS is providing a program analysis for that. Hang on, give me 1 second. Is actually going to conduct the program analysis itself. So more to come.
Thank you. We still have 12 more questions after this, so we're keeping up at least. Mona Singh adds a comment about the survey design, and she says, sibling-related questions should definitely be a part of the survey. With that, I'm going to move on to Amanda, and it seems like you have already responded to her. So moving on to the next, Kukun asked a question: which year does the new school begin? Who do we should we talk to if we want to share our concerns? Then the last part of that question is: we would like to keep in Wooten cluster. What should we do to go ahead at this time to make that happen?
Let me work backwards through those questions. There's nothing I can offer you to make sure you stay in the Wooten cluster unless you have kids in high school or late middle school right now. I don't, there's no guarantee on anything. I can't give you answers to that. In terms of where and to whom do you voice your opinions? There's nothing you can do right now because it hasn't started. But my advice to you would be to stay in touch with your PTA leaders, and perhaps volunteer yourself, because the more you're in the loop, the more you're in the loop. I like to say, I didn't fall into this capital improvements situation that I'm currently in. It was mostly because my kids were in a elementary school that had 850 kids in it, and it was built for 535. And that's how my journey through the capital improvements program began. And it was all by accident. So I would say get involved, stay involved, get on your listserv, go to your PTA meetings as a good starting point. Your Board of Ed member is it Julie Yegas? Correct me. Julie, your Board of Ed member is Julie Yang. If you have really strong personal concerns, particularly if your student is in a special education program, you could write a letter now with your concerns. But I might want to save that for a little further down the road in terms of your advocacy on your kids' behalf. But unfortunately, that's all we can offer right now. We can, and your cluster leaders can, advocate as a collective on behalf of, the majority opinions held by your community too.
Thank you very much. That's me ask the question. Can you hear me?
Yes, so please go
Very
ahead.
much. That's me ask the question. And greatly appreciate you share this information with us. I remember back in 2020, 04, 05, maybe at that time you guys are very young. And but we talk about this. And that was a big issue. And especially the people already in Wooten cluster, they don't like the rezoning to another, cluster, right? Because number one, we have kids went to school. Wooten school is a very good school. Number two, when we already in a Wooten cluster, when we purchase the house, the house, the price can be $100,000 more than the other cluster. So this will be a huge issue. And I hope that you guys already shared this information with us, and maybe let the leadership know, or superintendent know, or whoever they should know. If they do this rezoning the school district or something like that, and make the people already in Wooten cluster to be in another cluster, that could be a great challenge. And the people will fight for that. Thank you.
For that. Mike asks the next question. Helpful to hear that it is very unlikely that they would take seniors and juniors out. Does that mean that it would most likely be 8th graders in 26-27 school year that would start at Crown?
I can't really, I can't answer that. I could sit here and try and speculate, but I outside of kids already in high school, I don't want to who will already be in high school at that point, I can't really speak to that because I don't know. I don't think and nobody has the data yet to look at that.
Thank you. Dan K asks another question. As a Dufeef Elementary alumni, do you feel the neighborhood surrounding Dufeef Elementary has a higher chance of being rezoned to Quince Orchard High School? I believe the elementary school is closer in proximity to Quince Orchard than Wooten at the moment.
That's a really good question. I mean, it depends. Is your kid a really good football prospect? I don't know. I mean, there are lots of, I would say QO has some strong feelings about rezoning too. Like I said, every school is different. Every culture at every school is different. Just because you share a boundary with a school district doesn't mean you will end up there or the zone or the boundary will look like that. Remember these boundary studies is a huge swath of the county. So if you look at the way the boundary lines are drawn now, it's pretty crazy. And part of that is streets, part of that is residential neighborhoods. I don't know. I can't really speak to that. I don't know. You're right, though. You share a boundary with QO. But you also are adjacent to what's that really big school, elementary school in Kentlands? I can't remember the name. I think that's a really technical question that I don't think anyone's prepared to answer. My kids went to a middle school that was 2 miles away and we stared out. You could see from the end of our street, you could see another middle school that was in the BCC cluster. So, I think MCPS does its best to make things geographically accessible, but sometimes that always doesn't work out because of where schools have been built and placed at the time they were built and placed based on demographics and populations. So, that's another piece to it as well.
Brian, I have a question for you. We have about 25 odd questions and not seeing any more questions after that, at least at the moment. How much time do we have for this meeting for Sally to answer them all?
It depends on how long Sally's willing to stay, but we plan for up to 9 o'clock if there were questions.
All right, Sally, let's keep going then. I'll go to the next question.
I'm happy to stay till 9. I don't want folks to leave this meeting feeling like we weren't willing to take questions. I mean, we can always take the question. It's whether or not we have the answer. But if it's a question we don't have the answer to, we can put it on our list and raise it with MCPS.
Got it. Okay, next question from Mona. If MCPS was asked to propose a boundary, what would that look like? I'm guessing that would have some input in future work related to the boundary study.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we couldn't, there's no data, there's nothing driving that right now.
Got it. Moving to Audrey. How does busing work when freshmen are going to the new school, whereas older kids are going to the old one?
Oh, wow. That's really detail oriented. That's pretty in the weeds. I don't know. That's a question I'd want to know. Yegus, can we just put that on the list? Like, what's that busing going to look like if your kids are at 2 different schools?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that'll come out in the community questions and hearings too. And that is something that you should definitely mention to the consultants when they do the surveys, because they're taking all of that feedback into account when they come up with their options. So
yeah, and I don't think you can unbundle that question from the question about grandfathering students, because
that's
grandfathering in some respects is a cost driver and a cost saver. I don't know, you would have to have all the data in front of you to make an informed opinion about that.
Sally, this is Bridget. When back in the dark ages, when my school got moved to a new school, they moved juniors and seniors, but they did keep, they moved juniors. They did not move seniors. So they had duplicate bus routes. And that was when they opened Watkins Mill.
Thank you, Bridget. Noreen, you wanted to add some comment?
Well, first I want to say thank you, Sally and Yates, for being here today. We're so lucky to have you part of our community and being so engaged. I just wanted to share kind of, this is my aha, so what, and why I do what I do. I was at Ritchie Park. We fed into Ritchie Park Elementary School, and we were part of a boundary study that happened when the new elementary school that occurred. So over the course of a year and a half, they had plans, they had phases. And what happened was, I still remember November 1st, we got an email that the superintendent threw out all of the ideas and basically asked to come up with a new idea, which included, if you know Ritchie Park Elementary, it's off of Falls Road, to bus kids from there to Twin Brook Elementary. And it was a lot of issues with that. At the end of the story, Ritchie Park stayed in there were other pockets of the population in that Richard Montgomery cluster that were moved to accommodate to the new school, which turned out to be fantastic and everything. But my point of this story is that things move so fast and change. And do not get mad, do not get angry. There's a process in place. Stay engaged with us. Brian is fantastic. All of our community, Sumi is a part of this. I'm a part of this. And there's other, I mean, I can go on and on. Like, really, we are trying our best and we stay very engaged. I love our current superintendent. It was really great as we went to this anti-Black hate incident in our school and watching how the superintendent came in and how different it is from other administrations and other superintendents, because it's not that we're just having these conversations, we're actually having conversations and talking to them. So I know they're taking a different approach when they're looking at the CIP. I think that we're going to see a different way, and he has an approach, whether we like it or not, of how they're going to handle this. So understand the party line. My husband's a real estate agent. I would love to talk about my home value all day long, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So please don't bring it up. I think it actually makes them upset because they've determined, if you're a real estate agent, you're not supposed to list where where that house and what school it falls into, because that's not supposed to be a terminating region. So I get our house values are going to fall. I moved from Ritchie Park to Cold Spring community. My house is more than $150,000 more. It doesn't matter. They're gonna do using their criteria to reform and change those boundaries. Just accept that and keep moving forward. The other thing is to keep participating and keep being engaged. And again, just reiterating the point, it's not final till it's final. And so stay engaged, and just be polite and kind. They're not mean, they're all doing their jobs, and we can still get our point across. And that's what's so beautiful about our community, is that we do work together and we have a wonderful voice. So I know Sally didn't ask a question or anything like that, but you're welcome. If I said something wrong, let me know, or just chime in, and Brian too. But I mean, I can't tell you, don't talk about home values, stay current on the issues, and things are going to change very rapidly. So thank you for everyone. It means the world that all of you all are here and being engaged on this. So thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Noreen. Next one is from Kristen. Everyone should reference the Seneca. She adds a comment about the Seneca Valley study to get an understanding of what happened. They moved neighborhoods further away. I am not sure if the hearings are still available to watch, but I would highly suggest watching them if you can. The survey showed that the geographic location was very important to the parents. Okay, moving on to the next one by Lisa. Maybe you already mentioned this, but how are the middle schools that are split between high schools affected? For example, it would be beneficial if middle schools aren't split like Hebden John does at the moment.
You raise a good question. I'm going to tell you what I think personally, and then I'm going to tell you what MCPS's approach is. I don't like split articulation. I think it leaves kids in the ages of 11 to 14 very vulnerable from social connection. It jeopardizes that at a point where their brain matter is reorganizing itself every day for 4 straight years. That's my personal and professional opinion on that. I will say that if your community feels strongly about it, that you advocate for what you would like to see in your community, MCPS only uses split articulation. And again, this is my opinion, when it serves their interest And that may be geography, it may be transportation. So I think part of our advocacy and your advocacy should be about transparency. So tell us why that decision is happening and why that boundary looks like that and what is driving that decision. I think that's really important. And if you feel passionately against split articulation, then you should say that. But that's not for me. I can't say either way because I don't know what split articulation looks like outside of the Wooten and Churchill clusters. I don't know what it looks like at RM. I don't think it's split articulation at RM, but I don't know what it looks like in that whole Seneca Valley Northwest corridor either.
Thank you, Sally. Next question is by iPhone. You mentioned how students transition to new high school. How do they typically handle sports? Do they start with JV and then varsity if kids come in as freshmen?
I don't know. Bridget, what did they do? What did they do at Watkinsville? I'm not really sure. I don't know how they handle that. I know Yegas and I have worked with the athletics, the central office athletics staff and district-wide operations in terms of just getting athletics up and running when Northwood is now relocated to Woodward, and that's a big feat. I would think launching new programs would take extra care for MCPS athletics, but I don't know, Bridget, how'd that work at Watkins Mill?
Way back when, well, we started, Watkins Mill opened with 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And it was also at a time when we used to have junior highs. And so the people that were going into 9th grade would have been going into a junior high and were instead going into a high school. So the context is very different. But what I did want to add on is just for folks who are who may be in a neighborhood that you think might have the possibility to be rezoned, that there's also a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about opening a new school. I was going into my junior year when Watkins Mill opened. We knew I was going to get zoned there because I lived very close to it. And we got to pick the mascot. We got to pick the school colors. We got to have access to a lot of great decisions that were made. And it really strengthened the community going in. And again, this was literally over 30 years ago. But I think MCPS approaches these openings with a lot of intentionality, which is what I've heard from friends who attended Blake when it opened at the end of the 90s, or attended Northwest when it opened at roughly the same time. So just wanted to share that part of the experience, that there are some really great benefits to opening a new school.
Yeah, and it's a brand new building, which I think folks in the Wooten cluster can appreciate the idea of going into a brand new building.
Thank you. Moving on to next. Anand asks, perhaps I misheard, if the new Crown High School is slated to open in fall of 2027, then why would any potential changes be implemented in fall of 2026?
Oh, the changes wouldn't be implemented till 2027. It's just that the decision would be made in order to give families enough lead time to make, perhaps their scheduling changes, commuting changes, things they need to make in their personal and in family life in order to make that change happen if they are affected.
Thank you. Next one from Naz. She comments, I may be late to the party, but is there a proposed area that is currently zoned for Wooten, which would be rezoned to the new high school?
No, we're not there yet. You're not late to the party. You're right where everybody else is. Nothing has happened yet.
Thank you. Next one from Olenka. Is there a specific listserv for updates related to both reasoning and also how Cron will be staffed, programs, etc.?
There isn't a listserv, but you raise a good question. We have the MCCPTA listserv, which every school PTA has a delegate. So I share information out to the cluster coordinators fairly frequently. Every month before our board meetings, we didn't do it this month just because there was nothing to share, but we we met in December. We meet the hour before our board meetings to discuss updates to the RFP, to the boundary study process. And I can certainly share out my information as it comes to me to our listservs. It may be that we need to, as MCCPTA, develop a mechanism for communicating broadly to our school communities on a regularized, routinized basis. That's just something we haven't gotten to yet, just because there's nothing really to report. And like I said earlier, you guys are you're the first stop in this experiment. So the feedback we'll certainly use to enhance and improve what we're doing here tonight.
Thank you. Next one from DH. If Wooden Cluster is not overcrowded, then why is the school included in the rezoning? Wouldn't it make more sense to just take students from the overcrowded schools?
That is a great question.
I think, if I may, that it's not because they're going to rezone Wooten to go somewhere else, but it is possible that they will add students to Wooten. That's my thinking, but I could be entirely wrong. That is a great question. And if I may, it also goes to the question of, somebody else had a question about, is the boundary study going to move people around to like different high schools, or is it only going to populate Brown High School and Woodward? And honestly, we have to ask that question. I don't know. My understanding is no, it's intended to only populate those schools, but Sally, it's all part of the same question, right?
Right. If I were looking at my organizational finances, my logistics, my geography, my demographics, I would be looking to make fiscally responsible decisions that provide kids with geographic proximity. But, there's always outliers to that. I just don't know. I can't say. I don't have enough. I know clusters when I'm looking at the data, and I can tell you where availability is, and if you were to redo boundary lines, what it might look like. But I don't know across. This is such a gigantic swath of kids that I just don't know.
Thank you. The next question comes from Irina. Would the Wooden Cluster current teachers help revamp the new schools in order to have the same or better quality and not have so much impact on discrepancy between schools? This might alleviate the resistance to change if programs are equivalent and quality is not compromised, and maybe real estate is also not so impacted.
I can't speak to real estate. I agree with Noreen. It's really not a factor in the decision. And if you look at the aggregate cost of real estate in Montgomery County over time, I don't think many people worry about the value of their real estate. That said, I think that, I don't know how to say this. Yeah, I guess help me out here. I think that every student should have equal opportunity to great programs and teachers across the county. And that should be a part of the conversation too.
Yes. And I do think that we have to recognize that this is unprecedented territory. I maybe Bridget or you remember this, Sally, but I don't remember the last time that two brand new high schools were populated. So these two schools have no prior history at all.
It was 1988 and 1989. They opened Quince Orchard in 88 and Watkinsville in 89.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then our last open new high school was Clarksburg in 2006. So it's been 2 decades since we last opened a high school in the county, a new high school.
Go back and look at that data, but I don't know how that's going to affect things. I don't think anybody does. It could conceivably, as I put in the chat, have the completely opposite effect that boundary changes usually have, or that we anticipate they have, and it's important to remember that these are two. I mean, I can't overstate how beautiful Woodward is. And I have seen, and so has Sally, I've seen Poolsville High School and the renovations. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous school. And Wooten deserves that too. We're just gonna have to wait and see.
let me add another question to the same that Irina was asking. When it comes to school rankings, some people do feel there is an importance, and Wooten, with the history that it has, is highly ranked and highly recognized when it comes to school admission, college admissions beyond. Um, how does a new school, when it starts, impact that part of the whole, the development of the kids? Where they go, how they are selected, and there are all these assumed processes behind. They'll pick only four from the school or whatever the case be, but the ranking of the school also plays a role in there. I mean, there are all these schools ranked, and number 10, number 9, whatever the case be. How does that work?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I think if I were, and I worked at a university with first and second year students, but I would say if you're in an MCPS school, you've got a leg up on other public school systems to begin with. And you really have to look at the courses your student has taken. It's not going to be the difference if you walk into Crown and you're a sophomore or junior and you've taken, the same classes as a kid at Wooten, and you took some of the classes at Wooten. I don't know. I have some opinions about that, but I don't want to share them here. I don't think gosh, we could go down a rabbit hole talking about things like this. And I just don't want to, I know people feel passionately about it, but I think at the end of the day, there are a lot bigger factors than Wooten's ranking that goes into making a kid a good prospect for college admissions at a competitive university.
Okay, there is a big discussion about the house values between a bunch of attendees, so I'm going to skip all of that. And I'll go to the next question by Olenka. Is the rezoning only to populate Crown High School, or would the boundaries change significantly that we could end up being in Quince Orchard or Gaithersburg for that matter?
Well, Quince Orchard is overcrowded. So I think it's unlikely, but I can't answer that question. It's my understanding from the way the RFP was written and the way the resolution reads is that the study is to populate the two new high schools.
Thank you. Irina had the same question again, so I'm going to skip that. Moving on to Nas, certainly echo Hukun. Many families purchase homes at premium in order to be zoned to a particular high school. And then there's a whole discussion about that. Yeagis was a part of that. So it's me. I'm going to move past that. Dr. Bostic has sent a link for a form for PTSA members. So if anyone is looking for the forms that he was talking about, please go to the chat. There's a link by Dr. Bostic. I'll move on to Rachel. She says, do we know if the school principals have impact in the boundary study? If so, how much impact will that be? Thank you.
To my knowledge, they have no impact of the boundary study, but that's just because they're not explicitly listed as participants or on the steering committee. I would imagine the representative from the CAP would be present on the steering committee. I don't know. Yeah, I guess can you speak to that?
I can't. But what I put in the chat was I guess that MCEA and MCAP and all of the other unions will be engaged in the same manner that the community is. I haven't seen mention of that.
Okay, that brings us to the last question. What is the address of Crown High School? Do we have an address, a postal address?
Sally, you're on mute.
We do. I'm looking at it,
Sorry.
9410 Fields Road.
Yeah, 9410 Fields Road.
Yeah,
Okay,
I should beat you all to that
Sorry.
question. Okay. All right, Christine, I'll send you the link that Dr. Bosick has posted. Here you go. I'm sending this message to everyone. Hold on a second. Meeting group chat.
Sorry about that. I added it to the
Oh,
chat.
there you go. Thank you,
Yeah,
Dr. Bosick.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.
So you may
Okay.
have answered this. I've been distracted with some following up on comments and things that have come to me. When are we going to find out who is going to be on the steering committee? Are they going to share the names going to be publicized?
I think that they will be. I don't know the answer to that question, Bridget. We've been asking. I don't think, do you have an update? I don't know.
I don't know. The last that I checked with Dana Edwards, she said that they're working on the list and they'll be sharing the prospect list with the board because the board did request to review that ahead of time. I'm guessing that the prospect list will have some individual names and then also some names that are TBD representative of XYZ parent group, whether it's MCCPTA or Black and Brown Coalition, or whatever group it might be. There are several Asian parent groups. So but I think they understand that there's a lot of scrutiny that's going to be given to this list, and they need to make it as representative as possible. I would expect that we'll hear something about who's on the list in the next maybe 4 weeks or so.
How are they determining who gets selected to be part of the steering committee? I know they're trying to have representation from many different groups. Who is making that determination?
One thing that had come up in a conversation at the board table was should they have kind of an application process for people. So so when I say we will probably hear something in maybe about in the next 4 weeks, we may also hear that they're going to populate it a little bit differently than their previous approaches, which have been the people that we invite, so I think there's a lot still to be determined about that.
Okay, and we'll and as MCCPTA keeps us posted, I'll be sharing that information out to all of you, to Wooten community.
Hey, Brian, just one quick administrative thing. Are we saving the chat so you can send it to us? Because there are a lot of good
Yes.
questions that I'd like to make a list of.
Yeah, we can send just the chat file, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
I'll
just
figure it
the
out
chat.
how to do that. We do have the Read AI working through here, but I'll figure it out how to do this.
Awesome, thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll get it to you. And then for those that are on the call tonight, if you have further questions, you know, Sally, is there a good way to follow up? Should I collect questions and share them with you, or?
Yeah, that's probably the best way. And then I'll drop my email here. And you guys can just reach out if there's something specific or you have personal concerns or whatever. I'm happy to try and help. I just want to know if the MoCo show, is that a parent or is he lurking and wanting good information here? Reveal yourself. I guess you're not a parent then. You're probably too young to be a parent with a kid at Wooten.
I think they said in the chat, Ms. McCarthy, that parent the
Oh,
responsible.
okay. All right, good to know. All right, I don't have anything else to add. I wish I could. I wish I could give you more details, but like I said, it's the grinding gears of bureaucracy that sometimes come to a halt. But hopefully this will get started. The next official board business meeting is February 4th. I believe then there's one in late February, like the 21st. There are also spring facilities and boundary hearings for MCPS Board of Ed, and those occur in late February and early March. I think the dates are already on the board calendar, and certainly public testimony is always welcome. You don't have to necessarily sign up. You can submit written testimony, and you can submit video testimony too as an individual.
So we have a Katie. You're on mute if you're speaking.
Okay, there we go. Gotcha. Hey, so I went to Wooten 1994. Hi, Allie. How are you? I also live right across from Rio, right across from the new construction. Been there for 20 years. I know everyone wants their kids to stay in Wooten. I have an 8th grader at Frost right now. Wooten's great. Wooten's wonderful. Love it. My whole family went there. But this is just such a great location, walking distance. Like I'm not going to fear if she ends up going to Crown. Great. It'll still be a great school. You know, if it's going to take from some of Quince Orchard, some of Gaithersburg. I mean, we've always had like our whole area, you know, awesome athletics, arts, academics, everything. And just such a great location, right? To be able to walk over to Rio or Crown and, you know, go to Barnes and Noble and study. And, you know, we barely had you know, we had like open lunch for a minute or something in Wooten. And I don't know, I just think it's such a great area to be able to, you know, in the public transportation, they've just put in those bus stops. I think people need to stop worrying so much if some of our kids end up going to the new school, and it's going to be huge, right? So much bigger. I think there's going to be a lot of positive things, a lot of great opportunities, basically. As much as I love Wooten, I think having people go to Crown is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think
like
Bridget,
everyone's fearing.
right. Thank you, Katie. I think
Right.
Bridget
Right.
alluded to that in her
Hi,
experience.
Allie.
I would say that just Yegus and I have been, in fact, we're going to be at Woodward on Thursday for a walkthrough. We're working with MCPS so the boosters can figure out how to, we're calling it, you know, the interior decorating trip, how to make it a home and make it feel like a home for these kids for the next 3 years. These schools are beautiful. I will say they're spectacular. They're new, they're safe, they're clean, they're everything you want for your kids. So that's just, you know, like Bridget said, there's a lot of opportunity for kids as opposed to what are you losing out at Wooten? There's always what are you gaining by going to a brand new school? And, you know, that's just something to think about too.
Is it correct that Crown does not have an auditorium?
No, they'll have an auditorium.
Okay. During the first phase, I mean, like during completion, or is it?
It's phase 2, phase 3. So it will probably, I don't know. I'm not gonna, they will have an auditorium. I cannot speak to the timeline for it.
Sally, what is going to be the capacity of Wooten High School? Oh, sorry, Crown High School. How many students?
So the approximate capacity is 2,200 or 2,219 students. Whether or not they populate it to 2,000 students immediately or 1,500 or what that looks like, I don't think the intention is to populate it to its maximum enrollment just because optimal enrollment for Montgomery County Public Schools is 80% to 100% of program capacity. Plus the fact that this school is obviously being built where there's a lot of development too. So they're obviously going to have to keep some of that open. You don't want to populate a school and then have immediately go into over program capacity within 3 years of populating it. Because then you find yourself back in a situation where you squeeze the balloon and it ends up being bigger in a new place. So I would say,
do you think it has any potential to be a magnet school?
I don't know. That's a really, really good question. We don't even know that with the new Woodward. When I was first involved in the discussion about reopening Woodward as a high school in 2016, the discussion was originally, it was going to be an arts magnet school. And I don't think that's anywhere on the table now. But that's a really good question. And I think Yegus and Bridget and I all have concerns about those programmatic questions. What are the opportunities going to be for students who do attend Crown? What is that going to look like? Because we know programs in the North County, particularly Northwest, Seneca Valley, even Damascus, not Clarksburg, I don't think so. But there are specialized programs there that provide opportunities for students that, you know, Wooten students don't have access to.
I mean, I was coming from the perspective that if you know, busing or getting students from one cluster to the other is a challenge, or it is going to break families from one student going from one place to the other. It's a good way to bring in people from other schools into a new school and not break existing schools, and let students continue. That's one way to pacify that.
I agree. I mean, you know, right now, I think Blair and RM are the only countywide, Bridget will know this, so I don't want to misspeak, are the only countywide programs available with magnet, arts, and IB between the two. And that's just two high schools. So what does that look like? I mean, part of it is really holding MCPS accountable for that program data, telling us these are the programs, give us a map, show us every high school in the county and what special programs they offer. Because I bet you parents at Wooten don't know where a lot of those programs are, because I can speak as a former Whitman parent. I had no idea until my kid was in middle school that there were even opportunities to go to different programs across the county.
Any other questions? Right, Sally, one thing that I think is really important, I know MCCPTA tells MCPS this all the time, but transparency. They need to continue to be transparent. I don't think they're always as transparent as they really should be for a public school system. So transparency is really key. We need to know what is happening with this and with the boundary studies, and just to keep the community informed and really understand who's representing the interest of the different communities, I think is really important for us. So that I know that we're always advocating, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a Wooten community to advocate for our school. And it sounds like we had a lot of people on the call tonight advocating, so it was great. A lot of good questions. Thank you for being here and answering those questions. And as we learn more information, we'll be sharing it out. There isn't really a list to learn more, at least as far as we're aware of. MCCPTA would MCCPTA have some way of communicating out to
Yeah, I mean, I
members?
communicate with the cluster coordinators, so it's really
Okay.
The cluster coordinators to communicate it out. But I think we probably need some sort of more nuanced mechanism to get messages out to the parent community. Yegas, Bridget and I can think about that, sort of the
Yes, we can.
best way that's the most accessible for parents in whatever format that is user-friendly and not so passive. So I don't want it to be an email that lands in parents' inboxes and, gets buried with the 10,000 other emails that pass through, that they scroll through every day. So let's think about that a little more. I think we have some time on that. And I'll ask at our February board of directors meeting, I'll ask our cluster coordinators in advance to think about that. What's the best way to communicate with their communities? Anything else, Yegas? Brian, I now have that February 18th meeting on my calendar. I didn't realize you guys have another construction meeting coming up. It's like,
hopefully it's the last one, because I know they have
Yeah.
to go forward for permitting with the city of Rockville. So
okay. All right. If there's
Thank
anything
you.
else, just, reach out. I know you guys have a lot on your plate there. I know Dr. Bostic does too. But, happy to help and keep this conversation going. This was really, really instructive in terms of how we format this in the future. I mean, I was expecting a lot of people. I was not expecting, I wrote down at one point, 259 people or 229 people. So I knew you guys were engaged, but that's pretty impressive. So.
And actually, we will share that with MCPS so that they take us seriously when we say this is going to generate a lot of interest. So you people better be prepared, because sometimes I don't think they believe us when we say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know they don't always believe it, but it is true. So,
Well, and
I have already sent that feedback to
oh,
them.
thank you, Bridget. I also think that I always say to folks in MCPS, I don't care what you have. I don't care about this. I care about the substance of what you're telling me, but if you're not telling me the truth or you're keeping something from me, that makes me angrier than hearing the truth, because I need to decide for myself whether or not the information, I'm upset at the information, but if you're not telling me the information, that's you're digging yourself in a hole, right? It's like with your kids, just tell me the truth and then I'll decide whether or not there are consequences for it. If you don't know the truth, then you can't, nobody likes to be left in the dark.
right.
You made me ask me the question I was going to think that.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I saw you there.
I was going to ask, what do we tell our ninth graders who this might impact or may impact if they're already hearing, this rumors here and there? Do we have any messaging that we're communicating with at least the student leaders as well?
Right. So you have a current ninth grader?
Right now I have a 10th grader and I have a daughter in Robert Frost.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I mean, that's such a tricky, I don't know what to say. But if she has strong feelings about it, she should go to the Board of Ed with some friends and send some testimony and say, I know you're early in the process, but don't take me out of my school. I don't know. I don't know what to say at this point, right? Because there's no information. 6 months from now, we might have a better idea of how they're going to populate it in terms of timeline and the rollout of that, right? But
So
I
don't want advise them to wait and see how things unfold, to have enough information to at least to start with the teacher, principal, I'm guessing Dr. Bostic, how to start communicating with the students so that they are not kept in the dark either.
Right, and they're not.
They'll hear mom and dad talking about it and say, "What do you say?"
Well, and I don't want kids to get unnecessarily anxious about the unknown when there's nothing to get anxious about, because there's no information to fuel that anxiety, right? And I actually trust the kids in the Wooten community to be a very strong and vocal voice and participate in this process, probably more so than any other cluster school in this Crown study. I really think that. So it may be that they just start talking about it. It doesn't have to be, decisions or where they want this to go. It could just be that they start talking about it in terms of, if I were a kid, I'd be like, okay, well, tell me about Crown High School and what will that look like? And maybe that's different than Wooten, right? For some kids, that might be the right choice. I don't know.
And Happy New Year.
But the key is that everybody has the same information at the right time to make those decisions, right? And to voice their opinion. I think we get into a tricky spot, and Noreen talked about this, particularly with the opening of Baird Rushton, how awful that was at the end of the process, where the families in the RM community went through this decision-making process of the boundary study and engagement. And then at the last minute, the superintendent pulled the plug and they went with something completely different. And so the parents felt betrayed, I think. It's one thing to feel betrayed because your voice wasn't heard. It's another thing to feel betrayed because there wasn't transparency and the process wasn't what they said it was going to be.
Yeah, and that's why, we want the transparency, but also when there's opportunity for all of us to share information, whether it be surveys or focus groups or whatever it is, we need to participate.
Agree. All right, guys, this was
all right.
Thank you so much. It was such
Thank you
so much for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank
thanks.
you all.
Thank
We
You guys
you.
were
really
very
appreciate
patient with
it.
that question.
And thank you, everybody, for joining tonight.
All right, good
I do
night.
have a
Yeah.
plug-in,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Everyone,
Oh,
before you
wait,
Good
log
someone
out,
evening.
has a question?
no, the question it's more like an announcement that the principal's coffee chat is on Friday, 10:30. Please join, and Dr. Bostic will have any answers you may have seek from him for the progress we've made since December. So anyone who wants to join at 10:30, a link for that will be sent out on Thursday. Any questions that you may have, please send those questions by Thursday evening. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
It was great seeing you, Miss McCarthy. Take care.
Hi,
Take
thank
care.
you.